Okay, so last week really started to run out of time on the um, on this assembly, on this sub-assembly that we're doing. So this is a sub-assembly that we were creating last time. Let's go ahead and get this finished up. So what we had done here so far is I had this here. Remember, I have this piece grounded. One thing that I did not do is I did not put this into my home view, and I do want to go ahead and set this to my home view just like it is here. So I'm going to right click over here, right click right on the cube. Oh, come on, not doing it for me. There we go. Right click right on the cube, set current view as home, fixed distance, and this being the front view is just fine. Okay, so now what we're going to do, again, I put one bearing in this side of it. I want to put the bearing in the other side of it just exactly the same. So I'm going to go ahead and go constrain the center line of that bearing to that center line right there. Now that bearing I can tell is pushed in from this side, so I'm going to have to spin that 180 degrees on the axis. So I'm going to go ahead and flip to this button here, and now that bearing is facing out the way that I want it, I believe. Yes, it is. So I'm going to go ahead and go apply. Going to pull it off that surface, and once again, just like I did on the other side, constrain this one and mate it to this side there and apply that. So let's hit the F6 and bring that back in. So now I have the bearing in each side of this, pushing in from the outside. The flange is sitting here mated to these outside portions. Next, I'm going to go ahead and go constrain. I'm going to constrain this shaft right in the middle there. Looks good. Now, one thing you might notice on this shaft, and I believe this is the correct statement, the bearing I put in here is not exactly the right bearing. The shaft is actually larger in diameter than the bearing. Let's not be too concerned with that. It's just not this right bearing. You will have the correct bearings when you're putting these together next year, but this is not the correct bearing, but we're just going to have to live with that. So there's my shaft stuck into there. Now, want you to kind of visualize this a little bit. Right now, these bearings are just setting in there. Without something to hold these bearings in to this little U bracket, those bearings are just going to fall out. They're not a pressed fit or anything like that. So that's the purpose of these two things, which are shaft collars. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put the shaft collar in there. Got to get me to the right center. So the center line of the shaft collar there, and we're just going to put it onto the center line there. And we're going to go ahead and apply that. Now I'm going to go ahead and flush the end of the shaft collar right here. I'm going to flush this side of it with the end of my shaft there and apply that. All right, so there's that shaft collar. It's going to slide in and out this direction. Now once again, I'm going to slide this in all the way to where it touches tight against this side, and I'm going to mate it there. So I'm going to go constrain. I'm going to pick this little flat portion of the bearing there, and I'm going to mate that to this side of the little collet there and apply that. Okay, so now that's holding that in tight there, but now my shaft, if I wouldn't have just made it there, would slide in and out. It's not going to hold those bearings in place. So that's where I have to put this other collet. I'm going to find the center line of it there and put it onto my center line there and apply that. So now once again, this collet will slide back and forth on there. I'm going to mate that collet from that surface down here to the surface of my bearing right there and apply. Now, if you can visualize this, this shaft is locked there into place now. Has this set screw set in this here, rotate this around a little bit, has that set screw set there on that shaft, so this cannot slide in and out. These bearings are now locked into place there. So that's what we want. Now once again, this is what my wheel is going to mount to. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on here. I'm going to put the center line of it. If I can get the center line of it, come on, right there, to my shaft. Again, I want to make sure I get the center line, not that flat point. There you go, center line there, and apply that. Now, I actually just put that on there wrong. I want that spun 180 degrees because this part of the collet is what the wheel sets around. If I did it this way, my wheel would be sitting on the outside of it here, and it'd be almost impossible to get that collet tightened down correctly. because this little thing here is what tightens and locks it to this shaft. So I'm going to just go with Control Z and undo that, and I'm going to try that once again. So again, center line here to the center of my collet. Come on, give me the center line. And this is where I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, or sorry, 180 degrees, so it's facing in like that. And go ahead and apply that. Okay. Now, once again, this is going to slide in and out. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and put this on here, and I'm going to flush it to this end right there, and apply that. All right. So I'm going to hit F6 one more time. And this has got this little assembly made here. This is going to rotate around on there. We could go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and have you do this. Notice when this rotates on here, my flat positions of this, it's breaking the laws of physics here. It's overlapping each other. So I am going to go ahead and constrain this. And I'm going to constrain this line, which is the flat spot on this shaft. And I'm going to do an angular constraint, this constraint right here. And I'm going to pick this other flat line that's on my little hub. And I need to do this middle constraint, the undirected angle. So I'm going to click it, and it's set to 0 degrees, line those up perfectly, and I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Now, when I spin this, it spins the whole shaft in there the way that it would spin on that bearing. All right, so that right there is looking beautiful. We're going to stop this assembly right here. I'm not going to go ahead and have you add the wheel onto it, just because we're going to put that on the other part. So let's go ahead and finish this. I can go ahead and save it. Really not needed to save here, but we already had it saved before, so we're going to go ahead and just click save. And oh, I had not saved mine yet. I'm trying to remember what I told you on that last video to save this as. Yours is already saved, so save it as that name. And I'm going to pause here for a second. Okay, so I save that as front axle assembly is what I save that as. Hopefully that's what I told you before. And here we go. So now that this one's saved, we're going to go back to our Actobotics base robot here. And we're going to go ahead and place in a couple of those. So I'm going to go place. And I actually named mine a practice one. You did not need to do that to yours, but I'm kind of making a couple versions of this thing. So I'm going to go to my assembly. I'm going to go practice front axle assembly and put that one in there twice. I'm going to put it in 2 of those. And where I'm going to put these is just right up here on the front of my robot. Now, again, remember we talked about this last time. Mine, I went ahead and added this plate to the bottom of my other one that I didn't have it on. So I want all 4 of these to set at the same level, all the wheels. So I went ahead and added on, or these 2 already had a plate. So I have a plate here, little extra plate there, as you see. One here, one back here, and this is a little harder to see, and one right here. So I have all those extra plates on there. A little bit easier to see if I highlight it like that. And you can either have them or not have them, but I want it uniform across. And no matter what, you still need to have it braced at least 2 ways. This one with it on there, I actually have this corner braced 3 ways, which is just better yet. All right, so now I'm going to put these assemblies on here. So first I'm just going to mate this bottom surface of it to that plate that I just talked about that I put on there and made it right there. Apply that. Next, I want the center hole here mated to the center hole. So I'm going to go constrain once again, constrain the center of that to the center here, and apply that. That will let this whole assembly, will let this whole assembly rotate around here. I obviously want my axle pointing out on the robot, just like my other one is. So I'm going to constrain one of these holes here. So it's going to be a little bit difficult. I'll put it on there where I can get to it there. I think I can see that good enough. So I'm going to constrain the center of that hole with that hole and apply that. So that one's in place, won't rotate now. And now I'm going to put my other one in there. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and just do the exact same thing with pointing out the other side, and I'm going to do it here while I pause. Okay, so now I have these 2 axles sitting out here. Those blocks are constrained on, one on each side. So now I'm going to go ahead and place in my wheels. So I'm going to go place, I'm going to go to my wheels folder, And this is a different type of wheel. Some of you may not have ever seen this before. It's called an omni wheel. It'll rotate normally around and around as your robot moves forward and backward. And then as you're turning, these wheels will also spin here. These little rubber pieces will spin and let your front end slide side to side for turning. Makes a really good turning robot. So we're going to place 2 of those in there, 1 on each side, kind of like so. So first, I'm going to go constrain the center of that wheel with right there, apply it. Just like we did before on these wheels and these hubs. This is the hub that it mounts to, just like we did our back wheels, our drive wheels. So I'm going to constrain, I'm going to mate that part right with there and apply that. All right, so now this wheel spins around like that. I'm going to go ahead and I will put this wheel on there and constrain that bolt hole with, let's see, oops, can't do it with that one, that was the wrong hole. Let me try again, constrain there with that one. There we go, and apply that. So now that little hub's in there. It does, however, lock this so it doesn't spin now, but that's okay. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at this. I'm going to go here to this front view. Now, the only thing I don't like about this is notice how far this wheel's sticking way out here on this shaft. Let's think about if you had 10 pounds on your robot and it's sticking way out there on that shaft like there, that shaft is really going to want to flex. So honestly, I think this is sticking out way too far. I want this to move back in quite a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our assembly of this, our sub-assembly, and we're going to change that distance that this was before. Before I flushed it on this end, I'm going to now offset it some. So I'm going to go back to that assembly. So this piece here, I'm going to check out what I have for those constraints. Going to hit the plus sign right over here. And I have this one. It's no, that's 0 degree. There's my flush. So that's that in flush together. I'm going to click on it to open it up. And now it's set at 0. Let's try it at 0.5 and see what that looks like. So 0.5, hit my check. Moved it in there 1/2 of an inch. So now let's go back to our other assembly and let's update it. Hit the little lightning bolt up here to update. And now notice how that moved it in. Moved it in there where it's just barely off of this this collet that I have there. And I think that's pretty appropriate. And I really kind of like that. So now move this one in on this side also. I want you to do the same thing to put this wheel into place right there. So constrain that wheel into place the same. Go for it. Okay, so now what I want you to do is these C's, the outside of them will collapse awful easily. So to give that some more strength and rigidity, make it into a box, I want you to add in these brackets that I put here. Those are, if you go to place, those are underneath the pattern mounts. We put one of those in before, and I want you to add in pattern mount D. And we're going to place those in. I've already placed in all these here just to kind of give you a little bit of a preview. When you place those in, you're going to place this part that has the threaded portion of it. You're going to mate it to right here, like so. I then pull this out a little bit. Now I'm going to put one in each corner, one to here. And then once again, I'm going to rotate this out a little bit so I can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm going to constrain the center line of this one to that hole there. So what I want you to do, and I've already done this all the way around, I've put in 3 per side. I want you to do that. I don't care exactly where they're at, but put them in a place where they're going to work. So for example, here, this one, I can't put right back to where this motor is, where the motor mount is. I had to slide it forward to the next available hole right to here. And I put it to this hole, not to the ones back in here. But I want you to put in 3 of these per side. If you notice, I did change the color of those so they did stand out a little bit. You do not need to do that per se. If you want to, you can. That's fine. I just changed the material of that pattern mount D. So there you go. So I want you to add those in all the way around. For this one, what I want you to do for your images, again, do one of the overalls we have done on every other one. Do an image of this assembly, wheel assembly on the front, and an image of this wheel assembly on the front. And then do me 2 more views that I can see your pattern mount blocks in there. So it's going to be a total of 5 different views on this. One of